in a majority of 8-1, 8 Masons to 1 non-Mason. And it was during those years between 1941 and 1971 that they took God and prayer out of our schools intentionally to destroy the moral foundation and the moral fabric of our society. And boy, did they do a good job of it. You go right ahead, Bob.
I think the history of the United States, going back a long way, I would say probably right after we got independence, the first thing they did was introduce British mercantilism, which is free trade and globalization. They did that for 10 years, and it almost destroyed the country, and that's why they went to tariffs. And I did a program on ABC today, and I had the moderator tell me that protectionism doesn't work. I said, well, if that's the case, what happened to America between 1800, after they tried free trade and globalization, and in 1800 they set up protective devices, which are tariffs on goods and services? How is it that we did so well for so long? They work. Come on. We took them off with GATT in 1962, which became the World Trade Organization in 1986, and we've been going downhill ever since because it's deliberate, just like you said, Stan. And they had to destroy this. And one of the things that's very interesting that happened over this past weekend at the Bilderberger meeting, Danny Eslin's report said that the insiders are starting to have second thoughts about how far they should take this thing. They're afraid it is going to get completely out of their control and end up in total disaster for everyone. You know, like Road Warrior maybe, and they are concerned. And evidently he got a hold of a pamphlet that was distributed, and it was the format for the meetings. And that was included in there, and they debated it, of course. And he seems to think that they're not going to take this thing to the bottom like they intended to do. They're going to try to cut it off at the pass, maybe at Dow 6600 to use the marker, or maybe at 4,000. I don't know, or maybe here. But I don't think it's possible here. There's too much bad news, too much bad things in the pipeline, including dreadful banking earnings coming in July and August, dreadful corporate earnings, if any. You know, most of them won't make money. You have the Alta loans, and you have the option ARM loans that are going to run until 2011 to 2012. We ain't getting out of anything very fast, believe me. This thing's going to go on for a minimum of another 8 years. They can't pull it out, and this is going to get real nasty.
Well, my understanding, of course, is that certainly there are going to be a lot more home foreclosures. You know, there's really going to be some major home foreclosures. A lot more people are going to lose their jobs before this is over. In fact, where do you think the unemployment will be by the end of this year? Have any idea?
Let's use the U6 because it's the real unemployment rate. They got it at 16.2% right now, and my reading is 19.2, and John Williams, who you know, is 19.8. 22% easy by the end of the year, maybe as much as 25. Next year, somewhere between 25 and 35. The year after, only God knows. They've lost control, and you know, unemployment, or employment, I should say, is a lagging indicator by a year or a year and a half. So we've got a year to a year and a half of definite nastiness ahead of us in relation to the economy and finance, at a minimum. And so that's where we're headed. We could see 50% unemployment. Who knows?
Well, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. I see that certainly Macy's earnings were down at something like 56%, and certainly Target's earnings were down 45%. So many of our major retailers are having real financial problems because people just aren't purchasing. Certainly Chrysler is laying off. Of course, the number of dealerships are just letting them go. General Motors is certainly going, everything points it's going into bankruptcy, but even if it doesn't, they're going to close down a lot of their factories, and they're going to move their production overseas. And why are we bailing out, General Motors when they're going to move their production overseas? The jobs they're going to create are not going to be American jobs. They're going to be foreign jobs. We're turning Chrysler over to Fiat, and I think that's probably largely because the vice chairman of Fiat is a member of the little clique, the Trilateral Commission. It's the vice chairman, not the chairman. It can end up with 51% down the line. I think it's going to get 20% now, but there's all sorts of things that the Obama administration, which is controlled by the Trilateral Commission. 11 of the 87 members come from the Trilateral Commission, 11 members of the Obama administration. And they're talking about, well, they're going to give Fiat another 20% for this, another 10 or 12%. They could end up with 51% of our Chryslers, which we've been subsidized without them putting in anything. And, of course, it is our hedge funds and our pension funds that are going to lose out on this, as well as the stockholders and the bondholders. And what we're seeing is a transfer of the wealth of this country to the elite, and specifically to Fiat, which the vice chairman is a member of the Trilateral Commission. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the former head for years of Fiat was Agnelli, and he was the top aluminist in Europe.
And he was, of course, the man who organized the Club of Rome. Go ahead.
That's right. Absolutely. And so, this is what this is all about. And both Ford and GM have monstrous new facilities in Brazil. And the Chinese production for General Motors is coming into the United States this coming year. And also, Ford is ramping up to increase or begin large production in India. I mean, give me a break. The only thing that's going to stop this thing is tariffs on goods and services. If we don't get them, we're a third world nation.
And, of course, what people say, well, globalization, is great and tariffs don't work. Tariffs worked for 200 years or 150 years anyway. So they worked for 150.
From 1800.
Till 1960? 1960.
Actually, probably until 1980.
All right, fine. So that's 180 years.
180
They worked for 180 years. They're telling us, of course, we're doing so much better without tariffs. Ladies and gentlemen, look around. You're seeing the end result of globalization. You're seeing the end result of globalization as they transfer our manufacturing overseas, and they have that mantra, tariffs don't work, tariffs don't work, tariffs don't work. Ladies and gentlemen, certainly, are you going to believe them or are you going to believe your lying eyes? Our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. Back here at Radio Liberty.